Let's go over some basic derivation methods. In this video, we're going to cover the constant rule, the power rule, and the sum or difference rule. Now, the constant rule is fairly simple. If you're deriving y with respect to x, where y is just equal to y, you're going to get 0. Y is your constant, and when you're deriving a constant with respect to x, as long as it's not x, you're going to get 0. Next, let's look at the power rule. Say you have y as your function, and that equals a times x to the n power. If you want to differentiate y with respect to x, basically all you're doing is moving your exponent or your power to the front of your constant here, and then subtracting 1 from the power. So it's going to look like n times ax to the power of n minus 1. Let's do a couple examples. So say your y function is x to the third power. Now, if you want to differentiate that, you're going to copy this exponent down here to the front of your constant, and then you're going to subtract 1 from that power. So your answer is going to be 3x to the power of 3 minus 1, which is 2. That's your answer. Say your y function is maybe 5x, and that's it. How do you differentiate that? There's no exponent? Well, there is an exponent. Your exponent is simply going to be 1. So to differentiate, again, you're going to move your exponent down here, copy it down there in front of your constant, 5, and then you're going to subtract 1 from your exponent. So that's going to look like this: 1 times 5x to the 0 power. So 1 times 5 is simply just 5x to the 0 power. And we know anything to the 0 power is just equal to 1. So this is just going to be 5. And that's your answer. Let's do one more. Say your y function is 2 times the square root of x. To do this, you need to understand that when you're squaring something, you're basically raising that something to the 1/2 power. So this will be 2 times x to the 1/2 power. Let's differentiate this. So your dy dx will be 1/2 times 2x to the 1/2 minus 1 power. 1/2 times 2 is just 1, so we cancel that out. 1/2 minus 1 is negative 1/2, so we're going to get x to the negative 1/2 power. And you can leave it like that, or because the exponent is negative, we can write this out like this: 1 over x to the 1/2 power, or we can write it out as 1 over the square root of x. And that's our answer. Well, let's do one more. Let's say your y function is 3x to the negative 3rd power. To differentiate that, we'll write our dy dx. It's going to equal, again, moving this over here, negative 3 times 3x to the negative 3 minus 1. Now let's simplify that. Negative 3 times 3 is negative 9. X, negative 3 minus 1 is negative 4. And we can take this negative exponent and we can write that out as negative 9 over x to the 4th power. And there we have it. So now we went over the power rule. Let's visit the sum or difference rule. So to differentiate a sum or a difference of terms, you just need to differentiate each term separately and then add or subtract the derivatives. So say our y function is 10x cubed plus 2x. So here we need to differentiate this to term and this term separately. And we see here, we're going to need a power rule. And that'll happen as you're differentiating. You may find yourself needing to use different methods in order to get your end result. So let's go ahead and differentiate our first term, dy dx. That's going to equal 3 times 10 x to the 3 minus 1 power. That's going to give us 30x to the second power. So there's our first term. For the second term, we have dy dx, and actually this is a power rule as well because we have 1 as our exponent. So this is going to be 1 times 2 x to the 1 minus 1. This is going to give us 2x to the 0 power, and we know anything to the 0 power is just 1. So 2 times 1, that leaves us with 2. So altogether, this gives us the derivative 30x squared plus 2. That's our final answer. Now let's try this out. Say our function is x to the 4th power minus 3x to the negative 3rd power. Now we see we have 2 power rules again we have to use. So for our first term, dy dx is going to be 4x to the 4 minus 1 3rd power. And then for our second term, dy dx, that's going to give us, move this down. So we have a negative sign here, so we can change that into a positive. We have 3 times 3x to the negative 3 minus 1. This is going to give us 9x to the negative 4th power, or 9 over x to the 4th power. So our final answer is going to be 4x cubed plus now 9 over x to the 4th power. Let's go ahead with one more example. Say our function is 4x to the 5th power plus x squared minus 10x to the negative 2nd power minus 3. So we have 4 separate terms here. And yeah, we're going to be using power rule, and constant rule. So go ahead and pause the video if you want to go ahead and solve this yourself. So for our first term, we have dy dx is going to be, move this on down, 5 times 4, that's 20, x to the 5 minus 1 4th power. For our second term, we have dy dx is equal to, move this on down, and then subtract 1, we have 2x to the 2 minus 1 first power, so that's just 2x. Our third term, we have dy dx is, move the negative 2 on down, negative and a negative, that's positive, so we have 2 times 10x, negative 2 minus 1, that's to the negative 3rd power. So that's going to give us 20x to the negative 3rd power. Or we can write this as 20 over x to the 3rd power. And then our last term, that's just the constant rule. So dy dx will just be 0. So we have our first, second, third, and fourth term all figured out. Now we just combine. So our final answer is going to be 20x to the 4th power plus 2x plus 20 over x cubed. So that's the sum or difference rule. I hope this was able to sharpen your understanding of differentiation. Thank you for watching.